than all of them. Not I, however, but the grace of God that is with me. Therefore, whether it be I or they, so we preach, and so you believed. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Alleluia, alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia. Come after me, and I will make you fishers of men. Alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
While the crowd was pressing in on Jesus and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. He saw two boats there along the side of the lake. The fishermen had disembarked and were washing their nets. Going into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, he asked him to put out a short distance from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. After he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and lower your nets for a catch." Simon said in reply, "Master, we have worked hard all night and have caught nothing, but at your command I will lower the nets." When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come to help them. They came and filled both boats, so that the boats were in danger of sinking. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of fish they had made seized him and all those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Due to some inclement weather last week, the mandatory confirmation from I think it was supposed to be last Wednesday night, is moved to Tuesday at 6:15 p.m. in the parish hall. So if you, this is for any student, for parents of any student that is currently in 5th, 6th, or 7th grade this year. So if you didn't go to the one on Friday, you have to come to this one. Bishop Johnson has lowered the age in our diocese, so this year is a large year of transition for us, so it's important that we get it right together, and we're working together on that. Your 2024 giving statement is available by logging into your St. Andrew membership profile. An email with instructions was emailed out on January 29th. If you are not getting our emails, you might be unsubscribed. Please subscribe and contact the parish office to correct that. This weekend is the inaugural Called by Name Sunday, sponsored by Bishop Johnston and the Vocations office. This initiative is to identify those 16 years and older that might have a call to the priesthood or religious life. So Father and I are sharing our vocation stories this weekend at Mass, and there will be also an opportunity to speak with representatives from our vocations team from our parish, 3 individuals who are working to promote this in our church through various initiatives that I'm sure you'll be hearing about throughout the year. So, and this week, please pray for the men and women in our parish to answer God's call for their vocation. There is no CGS tonight due to the Super Bowl. Go Chiefs. So there'll be like 8 people here, I think, probably at Mass. I will be out of the country starting this week on a pilgrimage. I'm going to England with a priest friend of mine, so I won't be here next weekend. Father Haran will have the helm of the St. Andrew's ship. He'll be steering it, so you're on, Father. There you go. I won't have consistent internet sometime when I'm traveling on trains back and forth, hoping to see some holy sites where the great English martyrs were offered their life for the name of the Lord. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing, and I look forward to telling you about that when I return. I always hate talking about myself, but we were told to do this weekend. Share our vocation story, so I'll share a version of it. There are so many versions of one's quote-unquote vocation story that one can tell, and as I've learned over the years, to be a priest means to be captivated by the things of God and the church. And when I look back at my childhood as a little boy, before my earliest recollection, I'm told that I loved watching Mother Angelica live. I don't recall that at all, but apparently that's what I was told. My dad told me that. And as a little boy, going over to Grandma's house, I was really captivated by Nana Galuzzi's shrine. That was my grandmother's mother. And there was this narrow staircase when I was a little boy in their house, and you'd go up the stairs and make a turn. And she had her dresser there, and it had the Blessed Mother on the dresser. It had Santa Elena de Laurino, that's the family saint. I've been to that place too, in southern Italy. It's beautiful. I've climbed in the cave and visited where the anchoress slept. I still have that picture in my room today. It's important to me. And there was a little olive oil lamp, it was a little red lamp, and she'd have oil in there and a little candle, it'd flicker like that. And the room would be real dark, but it was a holy place almost. You'd see the whole light kind of flicker and light up the room, and you could see the statues of all of her, the shadows of all of her, the statues and the holy cards. And then I remember that this is weird kid, I set up an altar in my own room as a little boy, and I was raised in my mom's faith until I was 11, in her Methodist faith. And I wanted to become a Catholic. My stepdad started to take me to Mass once we moved to St. Louis from Chicago. And I've learned that in the most unlikely of situations, God puts various people in places in my life, has done that over the years, that call would become more clear to me. I remember my 7th grade year, I went to public school, going into 8th grade before confirmation. And I was so interested in being a priest. I even dressed up that way for career day. I have a picture of it. So here's like a construction worker. I think the little girl next to me is a doctor. And I have like a black T-shirt on and a piece of plastic here. And I even begged. I said, please, I want to go to the vocation camp. We had a great camp. And even as a seminarian for the Archdiocese, we ran the camp. Many years later, for young men that were interested in the priesthood. So you get to go and spend a couple of days in the seminary there. And I'm pretty sure that even back then, I upset the priests and seminarians when it was time to try on vestments. And I have a picture of that too. Somewhere I do. And you're supposed to put on the giant polyester poncho, and they had this cool Requiem Mass set sitting there. It was a fiddleback chasuble. I put this thing on, and I had them take a picture of me at an altar facing that way. And they're like, no, you're not supposed to do that. Okay, you got it wrong. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I have it right. So even at 13, I was total pain, thorn in the side of the establishment, right? And one of the priests, so yeah, I didn't learn all this stuff like yesterday. It's always been a part of my life. One of the priests at the camp gave me a relic of Padre Pio, and he called me real special. And it wasn't until my freshman year of high school, I was eating my Cheerios, and I was watching the local St. Louis news to learn that God actually spared me from being one of his victims. And at that moment, the shininess of the whole thing kind of wore off. I stopped going to church. I started searching mostly in all the wrong areas. Kind of became anti-Catholic. Wrote some papers. I remember writing papers in my freshman English class about priests and problems. I can't say that I ever had bad grades. I was an excellent student, right? I was involved in all sorts of activities. Way overachiever. That was that sort of kid. Some of you probably would have hated me. But God became less and less and less a part of my life. I put away my cross in my room, all of my religious imagery. And yet there remained in me some sort of nascent call for things spiritual. Sure, I attend the Christmas Mass. My best friend was Mateo. Mr. and Mrs. DiMercurio were great. They were like a second set of parents down the street, and they went to All Saints. We went to St. Joseph in Cottleville. And I'd go to like Christmas Mass, or sometimes I'd go to Mass, like his mom would drag us there. And we usually made fun of the liberal priest. He had like a big overstole on. We usually had a message about welcoming or something, and the music was terrible. Usually we would start, tittering and laughing about whatever hymn, and she'd be like, "Stop it, it's not funny." And my family stopped attending Mass. I remember one of the Christmases, we had like these girls in leotards that came down the aisle, and they had these big bowls, and they were like, "Yes," kind of dancing down there. And there was like a guy with a turtleneck, and he had a little flute. Very 1990s. Yet a part of me opined for what I never knew and only heard about from men like my stepfather and my own dad. My stepdad took me to my first Mass, and he supported my interest in being a priest. And then my dad, around that same time, when I was in middle school, gave me his tattered old 1950s hand missal from his youth. It still had his name in there. This is what children used to use to attend daily mass in Catholic school. And I was enamored with that book. I remember being in 6th or 7th grade. I took it down to my nightstand and I read that thing. I memorized every part of the Mass. I remember going to the first time to St. Joseph in Cottleville. I'm like, how come this doesn't add up with what's going on in the book right here? This is weird. I think about all those people in my life, like my grandma. I think she faithfully prayed like 5 rosaries a day before she even got out of bed. I'm pretty sure she talked to St. Padre Pio more than the Lord himself. All right? She really loved him. I'm pretty convinced that maybe she even saw him before she died. I remember her telling me that I saw an altar and there was a priest, and he was vested, and he turned around and he blessed me. And I said, who do you think that was? And I said, I don't know. Maybe it was him. I even chose him for my 8th grade confirmation saint before he was canonized. Sometimes if you give your kids a book, be careful, a real authentic one, it's incredible to see what God will do. And by the time I got to high school, I just I didn't have any to think about the priesthood anymore. I had never really met a diocesan priest that, I'll be honest, gave me that. I never even considered the diocesan priesthood, since the associates at that church all left and got married to, okay, I won't finish that sentence. But they never really answered any questions. But I knew I wanted to be a priest because this is what attracted me to doing it. But the seed was planted and it was still nagging. And as I got further and further away from God, it was still there. It wasn't after, dating several times and becoming really bored. I was getting ready for college that I decided to finally, I said, I think I should go to confession. I haven't been for 5 years. I've been very naughty. And I noticed that the traditional Latin Mass had moved to this really not so good area of St. Louis at the oratory there. And I mustered up enough courage to make my confession. I drove my little Ford Escort 1991 station wagon down there. I think I borrowed my a club from someone to put it on the wheel, since you kind of have to do that down there. I think it's gotten better now, but in those days, 20 years ago, that was not good. I entered the confessional, and that experience changed my life. The first time, I wept, and bitterly for all of those beautiful things that I had missed and I had chosen over God, that I pretended that I hated and that I had cut out of my life. I remember sitting there. It was a solemn high mass that Sunday. That was the first time I think I ever seen one of those, and it was otherworldly. I wept that this is what I had missed. And I felt an intense and almost palpable calling in my mind and my heart that said, you must do this. I don't want to do that. I mean, I want to, but I don't want to do it, right? It can't be me. I have to struggle through that for the next couple of years, right? I don't want to give up things. I can't leave. I don't want to give up wife and children and all those things. So I decided I went to college, and more I fought that calling, right? I was interested, but then I don't really want to give up everything. My pastor was a nice German priest. He was from Bavaria at the Institute of Christ the King priest, and he had these little intellectual, the smartest men I'd ever met up to that point. I was just enamored, and he was so nice to me, and he'd bring me in, and he'd let me eat with the religious community, and then I started going down there with a pair of jeans and ask him, what can I paint down here? I painted the bathroom, helped out with stuff like that. I never, as you go through that time period in your life between 18 and 21, that's a hard time period because you're trying to figure out who you are. There's all these different pressures to be this, to do that. What do I choose? There's other family pressures. You need to do this, right? I'm trying to choose a career. What do I even choose to, there's people in our parish like that right now, right? It's called like the young man's angst. And I fought that calling, right? And he used to say, it's like the rich young man. He's offering you all these things and you just want to walk away sad if you don't accept it. He was right. And, you argue with family members about this, other people. You could become, especially that age, they would say more extreme in religious fervor. But the more and more I participated and got involved, the experience of the altar captivated me. I thought of the confessional. I want to do that. I want to do that for people. I guess you have to ditch the girlfriend before you do that, don't you? Now, I would struggle deeply with what I should do. I even visited that religious order in Italy. I saved up all this money. I bought my own ticket, and that's what I was doing on my 21st birthday, going to visit a seminary on my own. And I went there, and I thought, I was kind of crestfallen when it was done. This is really cool, but you have to learn French. And I was like, I can't. I learned Italian. I'm not a big fan of the way it sounds. So I was a little bit crestfallen because I thought, this is going to be awesome, and I'm going to want to go here. And I just really can't leave everything behind. And I never thought of being a diocesan priest. And at every move, it's kind of funny. Even when one door closes, another one opens. At every moment, God kept putting people in my way. He wouldn't leave me alone. He kept poking me and prodding me, random conversations. I'd be playing a concert since I used to play piano at Mizzou. I was in the jazz band, so we would do, concerts. I think we were down in Jeff City doing something for House Representatives. We were doing I used to be good. Now I'm terrible. But somebody came up to me and says, you should think about being a Catholic military chaplain or something. And I was like, well, I have a suit and tie on. I never even met you. Leave me alone. God, leave me alone. I remember going back from that seminary trip in Italy, and I was kind of crestfallen. Italy was cool. But then I was like, I can't do this. And I sit next to some guy on the plane, and he's in plain clothes and a checkered shirt, and he goes, I'm a Franciscan priest from Poland. We talked for 8 hours about being a priest. He just kept putting people in my way over and over again. And the more I tried to do something else, every time I'd fail at it. I didn't fail about too many things in my life up to that point, but every time I tried to choose something else, my pastor would laugh. He's like, okay. Because you're supposed to be doing this, okay? That's what you're supposed to be doing. I could say that God constantly hounded me, cajoled me, pushed me, and gave me the grace to ultimately say yes. I remember one of my friends who actually left the seminary and got married, happily married now, but he was going to that Latin Mass parish, and he's like, you should try he was a diocesan seminarian for St. Louis, and he said, you got to try this. I'm like, I don't want to go on the stupid retreat. I don't want to do it, okay? I don't want to go there, so here it's Valentine's Day. You're like, wow, you're in college, and you feel like, oh, here I am. I drove all the way home, went to this thing, and there's Archbishop Burke at the time, and he was so good. He spent so much time with all these young men discerning, and he made us meet with each one of us. And by the end of that, it was one of those things. I walked in that building, and I said, I belong here. It was weird. I never expected that at all. And he said, he invited me, and he goes, you need to be here. And he goes, I could mandate that you're here, but I'd really rather not do that. He said, but you need to be here. And I knew that's where I belonged. There's a lot more to the story. But I will say this, that the journey from that moment to here has been fraught with many things. Sometimes a lot of struggle and pain and being confounded. Moments of great happiness, moments of sadness, moments of immense joy and privilege. But most of all, fulfillment. I will never forget, as a young man, being so captivated by what I saw. And as several of us say, to be espoused to the church means for the priest that when the church is dressed up, she is the most beautiful woman. To be a priest ultimately is to trust in God more than oneself. That's an understatement. To rely on God more than oneself. To boast in one's weaknesses, like St. Paul, and defeat, so that God's glory might shine through. And I've learned that, as I said in the beginning, to be a priest is to be captivated. It's actually more than that. It's more than to simply be captivated with the things of God. To be a priest is to be broken and consumed as a life of thanksgiving. This is my body. This is my blood. We break that host every day. Those same words that I am privileged to repeat day after day at the same altar that I was called to 20 years ago.